Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of the Native American Fish and Wildlife Service Southwest Conference. I appreciate you all attending. My name is Robert Romero. I'm the Conservation Law Enforcement Officer Consultant for the Society. And today I'll be giving you all an overview of kind of what we've done since I've been on board and kind of the direction we're headed. So hopefully all of you guys can see that. If somebody can just jump on board and give me the nod, that would be great.
Actually, I don't think you're sharing yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, just a minute. Sorry. Apologize for that, Leslie.
There you go. All set.
Okay, great. Okay, as I mentioned, I'm with the Native American Fish and Wildlife Society as the CLEO consultant. I'd like to update you guys on kind of everything that's been going on since April of 2008 when I came on board. And during this time, during this presentation, if you have any, excuse me, I'm having a hard time trying to figure out how to get this started. If you have any questions, please just go ahead and answer them, or excuse me, ask them via the chat. Leslie will help me with that, or just raise your hand and I'll get those answered for you.
Robert, sometimes I find if you just click right in the center of your screen and then try again, it's like it has to know what you're clicking on or something.
Did that move? Did that advance?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, so what slide are we on? Okay, all right. So this is a little difficult here, I'm sorry. So let me go back a slide. I'm having problems with 2 screens here, and I really apologize, everyone, because I cannot find what's going on. Okay. I'll just manage. A little bit about myself. I grew up in southwestern New Mexico. I was born and raised there. I'm a member of the Pueblo of Laguna. And growing up in rural New Mexico, I just had a huge passion for the outdoors, namely because we hunted and fished all the time. I grew up in an area that was real accessible to a national forest. And so that became my passion at an early age. And so I had developed an interest in law enforcement. Specifically, I wanted to be a game warden when I was growing up. And so I kind of ended up in that position ultimately in a federal position that I'll get into here in a minute. But after graduating high school, I attended New Mexico State University, go Aggies. I earned a bachelor's degree in wildlife science in 1991. But in 1988, during that time when I was at NMSU, I was between my sophomore and junior year, and I was able to participate in the Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services Cooperative Education Program. So in 1988, I did come on board as a biological science student trainee and started my federal career. In 2018, I did retire from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service after spending 29 years, well, over 29 years with the service. I initially started my career in New Jersey as that student trainee, but ultimately worked my way back west. I spent some time in Montana, California, Washington, Oregon, and Arizona on a couple occasions, but I've settled in Arizona. But during my time with the Fish and Wildlife Service, I worked many investigations in collaboration with a lot of tribal officers, and those were namely in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, and then also in the Southwest. I started off my career as a refuge operations specialist when I came on board full-time back in 1991, but I spent most of my career as an agent for the service. So in March of 2020, I heard of a request for proposals for the position that I'm in right now, and that was a job that I was interested in. I applied for it. I submitted my application, got an interview, and fortunately, I was offered the position and accepted it back in April of 2020. So I'll go over some things with you as kind of what I've done, what we've done as a staff in that time, a little bit over a year and a half, or a little bit over a year, I should say. We're not even at the year and a half mark, but it's been a great time doing a lot of collaboration with a lot of different folks. But for those of you that are not familiar with the program, I'm going to give you a little bit of insight, kind of why we do what we're doing for the conservation law enforcement officers. So there are approximately 300 certified CLEOs, and I'll use CLEOs and officers interchangeably here because that's just an acronym that's easier to spit out. But we have about 300 certified CLEOs that are employed in Indian country on a national level, and they're primarily responsible for enforcement of natural resource management issues or law enforcement within their respective areas. But some of them are employed by natural resource departments, and others are employed by tribal police departments. And so with that said, there's many other things that these officers do outside of just the natural resource realm. So some of them actually deal with any situation, such as traffic situations, drugs, domestic violence crimes. They often support search and rescue operations or other community policing situations when and where necessary. So they're definitely pulled in a lot of different directions, but they obviously do this to serve their communities. When you break it down, theoretically, one can conclude that each officer is really responsible for hundreds of regulations in an area that is roughly equivalent to about 187,000+ acres. And unfortunately, some of these officers, might make an annual salary that is less than some of their counterparts in the tribal PD if they're outside of the department, and for sure less than those in a local, state, or federal equivalent position. So our goal with the society is definitely to be able to support their needs through adequate and current training for them to meet their 40-hour training requirements on an annual basis. Also, and obviously to address any other needs that they might have. So when I got hired on, these are some of the deliverables that were part of my contract, and namely, it's to provide liaison and technical assistance to the officers on a national level. I immediately started reaching out to an established working group. We call it the CLEO subcommittee. It's an ad hoc group that I work with representatives from the different regions of the society to just discuss issues or concerns that they see from a law enforcement perspective. And so we tend to get together every month or so just to talk about things, what's going on, needs, etc. I work continuously, I guess, with the board of directors and the staff of the society, not only with law enforcement issues, but with other activities that are going on or programs that are going on within the society. As far as training goes, that's one of the big ones for me, as far as just trying to find training opportunities for officers at all different levels, whether it's going to be virtual, webinars, in person. We'll get to that in a minute, because we know we've all been really hit hard the past year, and even up to this time right now with the pandemic going on. But we managed to do quite a bit during the last year. So it's been a good year overall with that, with respect to training. When it comes down to that, obviously, we're doing this regional conference this year. So I was I was part of the planning group to do some of the planning for this regional conference. We're working on another conference for the Great Lakes region. We're working together for a national training conference or national conference upcoming as well. And then I try to work on providing opportunities for any specific or advanced training that I hear about from the officers or from their supervisors, you know, where we can support them to get to different academies to go through these advanced or specific trainings. Additionally, I do work with tribal law enforcement and tribal non-law enforcement to answer questions or provide a liaison, I guess, to them if I'm not able to work directly with them in answering any particular needs or concerns. And then I also do the same, you know, as far as providing technical assistance to non-tribal agencies or individuals that represent, you know, both private, state, or even federal agencies, you know, like the Fish and Wildlife Service, Office of Law Enforcement, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center down in Georgia, and they have campuses nationwide. So I mean, there's people that I communicate with just so that I can answer questions, build relationships or partnerships with that we can then use to benefit our officers later on in the future. So it's been a great great program to work with, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to continue to do this for sure. One of the big ones when I first came on board was to focus on trying to develop or update a practical pistol competition manual. We had one that was kind of in the midst of revision, several revisions, but it needed to be finalized. So I reached out to the ad hoc group and we worked together as a group. There were several revisions of this document, but ultimately we worked together to develop a current manual and then actually change the course of fire for it. But all in all, you know, everybody agreed that it was something that we wanted to present to the board, which we did. We presented this to the board for their review and consideration for approval. So in August of 2020, it was approved by the board, and this is something that we'll use from here on out to run for our competitions at regional conferences and national conferences. This year is going to be the first time we're going to use it. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. The guys in the field have access to it. It's available on the website at which I've highlighted there. But if you don't necessarily want to write that down, you can just go into the website, go to the link for resources, drop down to conservation law, and it'll be right there for you to access and download if you need to as a PDF. Man, I'm sorry, guys. This is a little tough for me here, trying to manage two screens. Okay, so 2020, we all know the struggles that we've had there. And obviously because of the pandemic, in-person training was just pretty much impossible. So the focus did shift. We started working hard to provide, you know, virtual training, virtual webinars to our folks, because that's all we were able to do. We had to do this in order to make, at least provide opportunities for these guys to maintain their credentials as officers. When it came down to firearms, there were some waivers that were issued. There were some exemptions with that because you have to qualify a certain number of times a year to be able to carry your handgun. But there was exceptions made for that. Right now, we're kind of working through some of those things to make sure that people are able to get out there and qualify in order to, you know, keep carrying their handguns and any other firearms that they carry on duty. But during this period, we were able to consult with several groups with regard to training, and one of them was the Dolan Consulting Group. And, at that time, when we first started dealing with some of these initial courses, there was a lot of escalation in policing going on nationwide. We knew that there was going to be changes coming based on some of the situations going on nationally. So we decided to move forward with some techniques that would benefit the officers to, basically minimize any interactions on either end, whether it was those coming from the public or from a law enforcement position. So we put on this course with the Dolan Consulting Group for verbal de-escalation training. We had 109 participants, and that was an interactive session over 2 days that went really, really well. And this one was also recorded. So those that missed out were able to go back and review this training. Additionally, we went to Caliber Press for the same reasons. Caliber Press is an outfit that has been involved with a lot of law enforcement agencies in the past. And we felt that, a little bit more of training on implicit bias was beneficial. So we went forward with this course as well. And again, we had 104 participants in this one. Continuing on, we worked with Arizona State University, specifically their Indian legal program. And initially, I had received a link for the McGirt versus Oklahoma decision that I shared with some officers. It was a recorded version, but it was a great summary of one of the Supreme Court decisions that happened in Indian country. So with that said, I got some information from Julie Thorstensen, our executive director, in the request to try to set something up for the Herrera versus Wyoming case, which was another Supreme Court decision that we wanted some interaction and participation with in a live session with Arizona State University. And so they were willing to go ahead and put something on for us. And we had a lot of people from non-law enforcement backgrounds and including law enforcement backgrounds to participate in that live session. And all in all, overall, between recordings and live sessions, we tallied up about 170 participants for both of these webinars. We also had Dr. Talani Francisco, who is on the call on the conference right now with us, present a humane euthanasia of wild horses, burros, feral, and wild animals course, because there's a lot of issues going on in Indian country regarding some of these issues. So that was a great interactive live session with Dr. Francisco, and we had 16 participants, and most of these participants were namely law enforcement folks. We also had the Fish and Wildlife Service present a wildlife disease and biosecurity, biosafety course for us. We did this a couple times, one in December and one in early 2021, but for both webinars, we had 35 participants. This one was also recorded, and we uploaded this one to our YouTube channel, and that's still available for those of you who want access to that later on. And the YouTube channel is, I think it's just Native American Fish and Wildlife Society. The Alabama Fire College is a sponsor of ours, and so we coordinated training, a one-day training session with these folks to go over hazmat awareness for any type of material that obviously hazardous material that these tribal officers could encounter during any part of their patrol activities. Or if they're assigned to different types of activities, in a fire or rescue situation. So these folks are able to get certification for this. We will be working with Alabama Fire College in the future to also help us out with the national conference doing the same course. So in total, we were able to train, let's see, 439 people. So for us, I mean, that was a huge success given the struggles and challenges we had in 2020. What we've learned here is that this will truly be one of the things that we still incorporate throughout the year for people that can't get to any potential in-person training that we may host or be able to host, hopefully in the near future. Moving on, we had, I had a request from Julie to draft a white paper because we had an opportunity to request some funding from BIA. And so what I did was I put together a white paper giving some background on the Society's CLEO program, what our needs were, what we project our needs might be for the future as far as training, equipment, personnel, etc. And so we drafted this up. Julie reviewed it, felt it was good enough to submit to BIA. And so when we did that, you know, we were hoping for the best because we did have a big request. And fortunately, BIA reviewed it and granted us the funds. So they awarded us a full requesting amount of $500,000. So this was a big one for us. We're happy that we were able to successfully acquire this funding, and this will be used in addition to our annual funding that we get from BIA for CLEO training, specifically for CLEO training. And most of the training, most of these funds, I guess, will be used for specific training. So those would be the advanced training courses. Those would be like if we had a need for conservation law enforcement officers to go to firearms training or any particular tactical training as instructors to then bring back that knowledge and skill and then help us as a society, as a group, whenever we have these conferences or even other standalone training opportunities for our CLEOs out in the field. So, you know, we do have a built-in structure there that we'll use for the allocation of those funding, and we'll try to stretch that out over 2 years. But in addition to that, it does include funding for an internship specific to the CLEO program. And so this year we were able to hire Mathis Quintana. He's a member of the Hickory Apache tribe in Dulce, New Mexico. So Mathis has come on board. He's been a great asset for us. He's a senior at Colorado State University. He's majoring in natural resource management with a minor in global environmental sustainability. So Mathis brings a refreshing outlook on things. And he's been great to work with. Just like all the other interns this year, it's just been a great crew of young folks to work with, and we're very thankful that they're on board.
Robert, I just wanted to let you know you only have about a minute left.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm sorry about that because I'm struggling through some things. All right. So here's a list of some of the things that are going on with me right now. We're help with the coordination of the Southwest Regional Conference, Great Lakes Conference I mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, due to some COVID restrictions and other precautions, we decided to cancel our training in Oklahoma and Montana for the in-person training that was strictly for the CLEOs. We'll try to move into that next year. We also are working to develop a national contact list for CLEOs, and we're going to use that namely to send out surveys that we established a survey. We want to kick that out to these contacts to then solicit data that we can use later on or in the future to justify some funding requests that we have. Lastly, I just want to say thank you to all who have been supportive of the program. It's been a great time for me, even though it's been a short time with the society. But with that said, it's been very rewarding. We want to continue to move forward as we have over this past year. And I think we can do a whole lot more once we get back to normal. And as always, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about anything, or if you think I can help you find some answers. So if we have a little bit of time, Leslie, I don't know if we do, but if there are any questions, I can try to answer those before we move on.
If anyone has a question, you could raise your hand if you'd like to unmute, or you can submit it in the chat.
I actually see one. Can or would you be able to assist tribes in developing, reviewing, or revising a CLEO PD for a tribe? I would certainly be willing to do that. I think that's part of the technical assistance that I could provide. I could also work with you to try to find some of those same PDs from other tribes, so we're not starting from scratch, and we could modify something like that or edit something. So most certainly.
Also, Darren, I did promote you to panelist, so you can be the moderator for the rest of the morning if you'd like. If you want to introduce Charles.
No, thank you. I think you're doing a great job.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Robert. And
thank you all. Have a great day.